sharpen their digital marketing strategy and learn about CLV, they call Neil Hoyne, Google's Chief Measurement Strategist and Senior Fellow at the Wharton School. He is my guest today, and we are going to focus on Chapter 2 from the CLV Revolution book. Stick around to understand how trusted are marketers and CFOs by their CEOs. Who should you persuade if you want to make your company adopt the CLV model, and how to navigate away from things like cost per click and last click conversion to customer lifetime value. But hey, stick around only if you want to get better at customer lifetime value. So, Neil, thanks a lot for joining me in this episode of the virtual launch book event for the CLV Revolution.
No, it's my pleasure. Thanks for having me. It's good to connect with you. Also, especially across time zones. Who knows what time people are watching this, but we can talk about lifetime value at any time. So this is fine.
Yeah. So first of all, Neil, what do you think about the book? What do you think about lifetime value?
So lifetime value in general, I think, is a great way just to understand customers and to people. And as you certainly share in the book, the connection that business owners have to one of their most valuable assets, if not the most valuable asset, their customers, to bring any type of strategies or realization to those connections that they have with customers, especially over digital, is incredibly valuable. And I take it even from a step back. I often tell people when digital analytics came around, metrics were kind of given to us, right? Like there wasn't a logic behind it. It was just kind of say, hey, this is what we measured. We measured bounce rates and click-through rates and conversions. And what you put together here is a story that says, no, this is about deeper relationships. It's about understanding for the marketers, understanding the people. If you're more on the finance side, it's understanding the cash flows. It's best summarized by saying this book, this revolution, as you call it, is about going, and this is kind of the interesting thing, revolution, to go backwards to something. It's actually going back to how, old school stores used to operate. You used to know your customers, their value, and you felt more in control of the systems than what's emerged over the past 20 years in digital analytics, which is just measuring towards arbitrary numbers. And so it warms my heart to see people going back to those relationships. And not only that, but almost getting that education to say, all right, I want to go back to what I instinctively know. Now you've put numbers around it so that I keep that same rigor. And now can you help me figure out how to do it so that all the efficiencies that I happen to gain in this weird, bizarre, last click, immediate response, conversion-oriented world is still applicable today. And so well done. And as I told you before, writing a book is difficult. Writing a book that's engaging to people is difficult. But I hope people overlook those faults of other books and will pick yours up because of the value that it provides.
Super. Thanks a lot, Neil. So let's focus on chapter 2, on the fact that you can actually impact customer lifetime value.
Yes. All right. Let's talk about this. By the way, and yes, I do have it here. I'm going to put it up on the shelf. There we go. So we'll reference it. We'll go back to it. But let's talk about this for a moment. First thing that needs to be put into place is that business owners are active participants, right? Like they have to be part of this process. And even though we're predicting how customers will behave, I think they do themselves a disservice by saying, hey, I have a great relationship. Let it take its course and it's going to be fine. And I think it's good that you approach that upright, because really what you have to say to all the business owners, to everybody listening to this, is that you have a responsibility to play after acquisition. And you certainly know I'm a big fan of personal relationships and tying these stories to it. It's very similar to say, if you meet the love of your life, it's not to say, well, I don't need to call him or her, they'll call me. And it's not to say I don't need to work at that relationship because we're just meant to be together. And it's not to say also that if you meet somebody, that what that first interaction is going to set the stage for everything that will follow. And you certainly have a role. And so what I found fascinating about the fact that you brought this up so early is that people need to know the role that they play. And this isn't simply a product of analysts. It's not a product of metrics, but it's a product of saying, how do you improve your business, your products, your services to better serve the customers that are going to contribute the most value back to your business? Hopefully I'm not ruining the entire chapter for people, but it's okay. We'll go with this. And people, I'm sure, will find even more value when they read the text, but I still like to share the stories.
That's right. So Neil, I want to disclose something about this journey, and in putting the second chapter over there was part of my intention to make people aware that lifetime value is not over there like a metric that the data analysts are going to take care of, and the leaders of the companies will just need to do what they've always done. So the fact that I've named the book the CLV Revolution, and in the second chapter I focused on the levers, and in arguing that you can impact customer lifetime value, you can improve it, you can optimize it. It's not like set in stone and you just need to hear from here and then that it's like $280. That's our lifetime value. And what do you do with this information? Right?
You get that. Well, you get that, right? I joke about it all the time. You go to Google, you type in how to calculate lifetime value, and you get all these bizarre formulas. And the one that comes up, and people are going to search for it as soon as I bring it up. You've probably seen it. You go to Google image search, you'll see this pink graphic that's like, here's a Starbucks customer and 3 ways to calculate lifetime value. All of them wrong, and all wildly different numbers. And then they're like, well, what do we do? And they're like, well, we got 3 wrong numbers. They're like, all right, we'll average them together. And then they get like $225 US. And then they're like, so I guess Starbucks can spend up to $225 to acquire a client. And you're like, no, don't. It betrays a lot of what we're talking about. And so I always offer that cautionary tale, is that I think when people get excited about this early on, they say, I want this insight. How do I do this? And they quickly run into whatever Google says. Don't follow your book. Don't go to Google. But the other part that you bring up is actually something. You have an interview or one coming up with Pete Fader of Wharton, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So Pete had this idea. I'm gonna ruin it unless he's already brought this up in a different series, to which I will perpetually apologize. But he'll probably tell me you can't say this enough. But the traditional lens of marketing has always been this bizarre funnel, which is product creates something with their knowledge, and then they hand it over to marketing, they hand it over to sales to push it as hard as they can into the market at the lowest possible price and just relentlessly improve efficiency. And a lot about what you talk about in this tone of controlling and managing CLV flips that model upside down, which is to say, it's not the products that come first. It's the customers that come first. And it's understanding the customers, and then those insights about what they want, about how you deliver your service, then filters down to what product should build. Now, product people tend not to like this because they say you're really subservient, but you make the case. It's not marketing driving product. It's your customers driving product. And it just so happens that you want to be, as a business owner, as close to those customers as possible, because the more you understand what their needs are, the better you can develop products that will nurture and develop those relationships and change the course of those customers, as opposed to simply looking internally and saying, well, what do we want to build this month for our customers? Letting them lead you and say, hey, here's how much money I have. Can I convince you to build something that will allow you to extract more value from me?
Yeah, you've touched an aspect that I've been wrestling with for years, because as an entrepreneur, I have seen as well. So basically, I thought of what if we would be doing these features? So if we would be building this new module, instead of going out there and prioritizing the backlog and the roadmap based on the main struggles of our customers. But I don't know, suffering is the best teacher. So
it is. It's and I empathize with that, because, I talk to companies all the time, and they always tell me, they're like, look, Neil, it's great to think about this, But what are the realities of the business owners? And how do I balance these pressures of, I will have internal teams saying, I want to build this stuff. And then everyone now and then will throw out that, that quote. I think it's, I don't know if it was actually said by Henry Ford, but Henry Ford kind of having this idea to say, like, if you would have asked the people what they wanted, they would have said a faster horse.
Yeah.
And I've heard that Steve Jobs in particular was notorious for ignoring his customers under this idea that they don't have a vision. And I know people throw that around to be like, I don't need to listen to customers. And I get the sense that it's not only wrong, but companies don't go deep enough in terms of understanding truly what their customer needs are, but also understanding the potential for those relationships. And so they look at all customers very much like that Starbucks example as being equal. And so asking one person over here and one person over there is equal to them, and they average that together. And the other thing that I think is worth mentioning, and hopefully this takes a little bit of pressure off the readers, is that when you read this content, it often challenges your thinking in a very fundamental way, almost in the sense that, you know, somebody shines a light on something and you're like, everything I've been doing for the past 10 years, for the past 20 years, for the past 30 years is fundamentally wrong. And I see this too with MBA students. When I talk to them, MBA students will get this idea to be like, all right, if I want to go into digital marketing, I need to know about clicks and conversions. And then my dumb ass comes in there. I'm like, no, lifetime value customers. And they're like, what did I just spend 2 years and thousands of dollars in money learning? And so I think it's appropriate. This is something I wish I could take a label and stamp it on the front of every book here. Maybe some point I'll do this will be like a preface that I think should go in every CLV book. You don't need to be the perfect person, the perfect company for your customers. You simply need to be better than your competition. And that's enough. And so what you give people is you give people a definitive playbook where I hope that they follow every lesson inside, because you've certainly put in the time, the blood, sweat, and the tears, not only in writing the book, but about learning about these behaviors. And people have this and say, well, these are all the things you need to change. But then also recognizing it for readers to say, even if you just change a small portion of your business every day or every week, you're going to connect better with your customers than people that ignore these lessons wholesale, the people that think it's too dramatic of a change or it's too overwhelming. And so almost giving everybody kind of a free pass to say, you don't need to get this 100% right. You don't need to have the exact words and the exact moment for every customer and know exactly what their value is. You just have to be more in tune with what these behaviors are and how you can connect with them better than the alternatives that they face in the market. And so hopefully that gives everybody hope, because I know it can overwhelm. Like for us, we deal with this stuff day to day. We throw it around. But I want anybody that's thinking about going on this path and joining this revolution to also realize that any contribution and moving in that direction is better than just reinforcing a status quo, which is proving not to work.
Yeah, Neil, I have to also build on top of what you've said to the fact that this is not happening only to the students, which are just starting out and getting their hands dirty into the digital arena. This is also happening to leaders, because as I will point out further in the book, not in chapter 2, but in chapter 3, it's the CEO of the company should be in charge with improving the lifetime value, because it's not a marketing game, it's not a logistics game, it's not about a fulfillment game. So everyone, all these aspects should be connected towards providing a better life to their customers. So which means the customer journey is not just the job of the marketing, right? And that's why you can't throw a target for lifetime value to the marketing team, like increase this by 20% in the next 9 months. Here's a budget, goodbye. Because if you are selling shitty products, you can't improve lifetime value. It doesn't work.
Right? But this is where you work a lot better than I do. I am a classic marketer. You are a CEO, an entrepreneur. CEOs trust other CEOs. They trust other entrepreneurs. Did you know they only trust marketers 10% of the time? Like, this blows my mind. It's like, how often do you trust other people in your C-suite? CFOs, 90% of the time. They have generally accepted accounting principles. They follow those. They have GAAP. What about marketers? And 10% of the time, they know how to sell stuff. They know how to package it. But that is a real challenge, right? In organizations, is that when marketing brings us up and it's looked at just as being a marketing function, it's quick to dismiss it and say, oh, this is how they want to play. They want to say that they built a brand and that brand is going to lead to revenue later on. Isn't that a nice story? And it's true, but I understand the skepticism. And if it's just marketing, you end up with that disconnect where people are, here's a company that gets me. Here's a company that's saying all the right things. And they experience your product and I'm like, what the hell happened?
Yeah.
Like, what is this? What were you promising? And the poor marketing people are like, we're trying. And then they lose those customers. They don't realize their full value because the organization doesn't make sense. It's not consistent in what it's pretending to be and what it's actually doing.
Yeah. And I think here, Neil, it's also the job of the leadership team to understand that they should be changing their ways, even though it's so hard. I think the current economic context is helping by being so adverse to growth and to profitability. And I don't know about you, but I've seen more and more companies and more people starting to focus on lifetime values. For instance, we were selling conversion rate optimization and all that, the other tools. And I've dried my mouth talking about, hey, let's focus on lifetime value as well, because if you do this, the profitability of the entire company could go like this. And they've said, yeah, that's very interesting. And guess what? This year, after all so many years, I've heard from more companies and from more of our customers, hey, we have like a new project towards lifetime value. Let's start doing stuff together, because the leadership team and the CFO, if you can believe it, realized that we need a lifetime value model, because they've seen eventually that you can't print money. You can't forecast.
Oh, wouldn't it be so great? Don't pop my bubble. I can't just print. I can't just. No, you're right about it. And I wrestle with the economic climate as to saying what's driving change. I see it moving some companies because they're trying to prove that even if they don't have profitability today, something is coming. This is why this is attractive to startups and venture capitalists, is because they know the companies that they're funding today will not be profitable today. They will take time to grow, and they use lifetime value in a very selfish sense, but still it's fine. They're following the principles, which is to say, we know you're headed in the right direction. If we're looking at an investment window of 3 to 5 years, we can look out at the lifetime value and truncate it and say, you're headed in the right direction. Where a lot of companies put themselves in a box to say, we need profitability every quarter. But I think kind of a larger thing that is worth just pointing out here is that this is a much more quieter revolution than what I expected. Yeah. I expected you go to conferences, and you certainly get some. You get some CRM conferences and some customer-oriented conferences where they talk about this. But the companies that I found being most successful with this don't want to mention it to anyone. Yep. Because they feel like it's a distinct advantage for them, that they figured out something that the rest of the market hasn't, that they know when they're looking at customers in a market or what products to build, that it's an advantage for them not to share how they're making those decisions. They're not going on conferences and conference keynotes to say, look what we did, which, by the way, draws a strange contrast to AI, where I know a whole bunch of companies that aren't doing anything with AI, but are on stage being like, look what we're building with AI. We're no longer .com, we're .ai. Valuations go up. But on the CLV side, they're being quieter than I would have expected. And you see it sometimes with the B levels and some of the people in the trenches, but C levels that I know that are on lifetime value are not on earnings calls talking about it. They're not trying to use it to falsely boost investor confidence. They're using it to say, we know we have something here that is structurally great, that is strategically sound. And as they pull away from their competitors who are stuck on older ways, you see this disconnect between the two companies. One company has a secret that they're using. They're like, all right, we know the value and who's worth it in our market. And you have other customers who are like, well, how come they're able to bid and acquire these customers and build relationships? What is it that they're doing? And it's all the stuff that you talk about in the book. It's that, well, they have a different way of understanding their business performance, and what they should be following is their true north.
Yeah, I think indeed that the people, companies are not bragging about the fact that, hey, we've discovered warm water. I mean, we are now customer centric for real. I mean, we are actually measuring the value that the customers bring and the value that we
Yes.
give to them. It's not like they start to brag about the basic and the fundamentals, even though they start to invest in it. And I think that's a good sign. And the I was watching this documentary narrated by Morgan Freeman about the life on our planet, and it has that scale from 500 million ago, 250, 100 million, 50 million. And I've seen that it's always the same story. I mean, you will vanish completely if you're not relevant and if you're not finding ways to be relevant in the future, not in the past. So it doesn't matter that you are Blockbuster or Kodak.
It's those companies, and they disappear, and people wonder, they're like, where did they go wrong? And we look back, and I would have loved, this was before my time in business, but I would have loved to be in the room with Blockbuster and to have heard the debates about how they probably minimized their competitive pressure. Or this is what I often think is the case: they thought they had a strategic response to it. Like, we often look at this disruption in these markets to say, I'm not going to discount a small startup coming our way. When often what I see happen is, no, they know the problem that's coming right their way, but they misinterpret the strategies and the systems behind these companies' success. And so they look at it and they're like, okay, so they have a price at X, or they have a streaming service of Y. We can replicate that. Well, no, their strategy is that they're more in tune with long-term customers and they're willing to invest, whereas you're going after cheap acquisitions. And so you both can be growing and saying, look at our customer numbers growing, but you're paying more for your customers. They're not staying as long. You see greater churn rates. You're trying to refill that pot. And so all of a sudden, your unit economics are way off because you're simply looking at what you think the product is, not the system that they have underneath it, understanding their customers. And so it's always an interesting challenge that companies face, is to say, do you really know what's driving the decision making? I mean, Amazon faces as well. When they came into the market, you could imagine all the booksellers here in North America saying, well, wait a minute, you're going to ship books? You're going to pay for that. We have a physical retail presence. We have agreements with distributors, and you're going to sell. Why are people going to buy online? They like coming in. They like flipping through books. Like, do you remember? Here in the States, it was big. It's like had this bookstore culture. You don't and sit through and flip through these books. And it was because Amazon was focusing on the high lifetime value customers. No, these are the people that buy the most books. And so we can spend more time servicing these customers and shipping books to these customers because they're spending the most money in the category. And as their customer base got richer, everybody else was left with the people left over. And they came down to the showroom people. These are the people that are going to come in, read the books like I'm a library, have some coffee, put the books back on the shelf and go home. And Amazon's going to be the one selling. And then all of a sudden they become obsolete. And now this is, of course, not doom and gloom to any of the readers of your book or any of the listeners here. If anything, I hope it sets the tone for the urgency of following these lessons. And not simply saying that we can take our own pace, but to say this needs to be done, because if it's not you and it's not a startup, this is a cautionary tale to all the leaders out there. I've had more conversations than I can count with mid-level executives who are like, you know what? I can't convince my boss to follow CLV. So you know what? I'm just going to go out, take 3 or 4 people from the company with me, and we're going to do it ourselves. And so inevitably, this is going to happen to every business in every industry. It's just a question as to who's going to do it. It's either the existing leaders are going to drive their businesses forward, or the people that they're overlooking are going to go venture out on their own, and you're going to have a serious competition problem later on.
Yeah. I've seen that this is happening because there are more and more internal champions, or let's say smart people, which are working for not so smart organizations. And indeed, what they want to do is to advocate for change. But if they can't do it, or if they feel unable to do anything, that's the biggest demotivator. Because if you have smart people willing to change things around, you need to at least listen to them. But if they don't, they are going to be having this fork in the road. Should I stay or should I go with this company? And And that's it. I mean, at the end of the day,
That's
uh,
no,
you have the company journey, you have the employee journey, you have the customer journey. And if there are employees which get that they should be improving the customer journey, and the company journey is far away from that, they will find companies that will listen to them and to what they have to do.
that's exactly it. And you know what? I would challenge everybody there. Everyone that is a non-believer, or everyone that says, "Look, my company's not going to make this transition, or we're perfectly fine with the strategy that we have." I say it's fine. I say everyone's free to choose the strategy that they want, and I'm the last person to tell anybody whether it's right or wrong. But I would want them to be deliberate with how they voice that to their customers. Play it back for yourself to say, all right, we're not going to do the CLV thing. Okay. So what you're telling me is that whether a customer spends $1 with you or $500 with you, that you're going to value them the same way. And if that $500 customer wants to leave, you will give them as much cause and concern as a customer that isn't spending anything with you. Or if you're paying attention. And if you're going to do that, I just want you to play that back to say, this is a strategy you're going to go. And if it makes sense and you want to go the way, well, God willing, enjoy. But it's difficult sometimes for them to say that. It's to say, well, what is, we hide under metrics that are faceless. Conversion rate, right? That doesn't sound, what are we measuring? Conversion rate. Okay. Last click attribution. That's the problem. Marketing, right? We buried all these technical terms that don't have any human meaning. And when you start playing it back to people and say, relationships don't matter for us. The value you contribute over time doesn't matter for us. The journey you're taking as a customer and our ability to develop you as a customer doesn't matter. It's hard for people to say these things, but it's easier just for them to say, we want to keep doing everything the way that we've always done it. And so sometimes that's the challenge has to come in. Not do you believe me, but do you believe in the strength of your current strategy? And that's a hard one for a lot of companies to defend.
Love it. Yes. So Neil, I guess that's a wrap for this episode. Thanks a lot for pointing out the truth, and maybe hopefully in the next year these are going to be just relics of the past, because more and more are doing this by default.
I hope all this stuff is proven obsolete with a new era of customer-centric measurement that future marketers and business leaders will develop and make their own. But it all has to start somewhere, right? We have to take those first steps in an organization. And congratulations on the book. I wish you best success of its launch. Do anything I can for you here in the States and for the companies I talk to as well.
Super. So Neil, thanks a lot for joining me into this episode. And for you out there, watch out, because a new episode is coming your way pretty soon with Professor Peter Fader.